Now, uh, when were you born, Mr. Bachman?
1916.
And you're Edward Bachman. And your middle, do you have a middle initial?
Renus.
Renus.
That was my dad's name.
Okay. And tell me a little bit about your family here that you grew up in.
Well,
what year was that?
1916.
In the month?
April 10th.
Okay.
And well, I was born here in the house that I'm living in now.
And how many years ago is that?
Well, ever since 1916.
92 years?
Yep, 92 years. And my parents lived here ever from 1912 on. They bought the place here from my grandfather. He built all the buildings to this here, and then when he sold here, why he moved. He built a home in Hanover.
Oh.
And so I'm here all my life in the same house. So.
And how many brothers and sisters do you have?
I have one brother deceased and my sister's deceased. I'm the only one left in the family.
And how many children were there altogether?
It was 3 of us.
3 of you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that's.
Are you the oldest, or?
I was the youngest.
The youngest.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was the youngest. My sister was the oldest. And
now you went. Tell me a little bit about your area here. What were the roads like back then?
Roads? Well, they were dirt roads. Old wagon trails, you might as well call them. When it rained, they got muddy and made ruts in them that you couldn't hardly get through, and so that's the way we had to travel in and out till you can say up in the 50s, till they made a state road in here. And we had to maintain our own roads at this end of the county because the county never got here. My oldest son was going to school before they ever plowed snow in this section. He was he was born in 40. It was around 1950 before they ever started. They plowed the road off with snow here. We kept our roads open with our own equipment. We made snow plows and tractors, and that's how we got out. So that's how we maintained ourselves here, and we had to shovel out still. Sometimes the snow was that deep we had to walk a mile to get home from work. And so.
What kind of work was around here? Where do they go for work?
Well, work from here we went to Hanover mostly. Yeah. Well, I had worked in Hanover. I was with Krause's at the time that was. I was working in there already.
And what kind of company is that?
It was a planing mill. We made church pews and anything at all, and we made all the furniture for W.L. Sterner's store when he built the new store. And churches, we made church pews for churches. I helped to remodel the one up in Gettysburg. We made new pews for that where Lincoln was in. We had the Lincoln bench down at our shop with the plaques on it. Yeah.
Tell us about what you did for the courthouse in Carroll County in West.
Well, I made all the windows and doors for the courthouse in Carroll County. That was at Ivan Dutter's that I was working at, architectural millwork that time.
And where were they? Where were
right in here off of Baltimore Pike at Ann Street, right across from Mount Olive Cemetery down to the right when you go into Pike. There's where their mill was.
So you made all the windows and doors?
Yep. That's what I did for the courthouse in Westminster. And then we had done a lot of church pews for different churches all around. Sometimes I never knew where they all went to.
Tell me a little bit about your your wife's in-laws, your wife's folks. How do they come here? Where do they come from? And their last,
Well,
her maiden name is
Warner.
mhm,
My wife's name was Pearl Warner,
mhm.
Pearl Irene, and she grew up down at Marburg, down at where the Marburg Lake is down. Well, they call it Cadores now, and where Gladfeller built that big lake. Their farm where they lived on was the first one that Gladfellers bought. 200-acre farm that they lived on.
Can you tell me a little bit about the meeting house that you had?
What, at the Wens Meeting House?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was formed by my mother's side of the relation, from what would have been cousins of hers that built the meeting house over here. And as far as that, she was born just a mile from here down, they call it Bangor Road now. There's where she was born. And there's where they have this big open bar I was telling you about on the same place yet, and it's still standing.
When was that meeting house built? Do you remember about?
Oh,
Just about. It's not right.
It was 1877, I think.
18. And it's still.
It's still in operation yet.
And how far is it from your house?
Well, from here, I'd say to go around the road would be about 4 miles.
About 4 miles.
It's on the St. Bartholomew's Road, right from Impounding Dam to the Grand Valley Road.
And you still use it?
Yeah. This winter they remodeled the whole floor in it. It was getting saggy a little bit at some places, so they put new timber underneath and put the floor back down again.
Now, how does it heat it?
10-plate stoves.
And they're the same ones, same stove?
Same stoves are still sitting in it, and they still got the working yet. Here years ago, we had a fella came out and fixed it and had it playing. Yeah. And
so that's the same organ?
yeah, that's the same organ that was in ever since I know the meeting house.
And tell me a little bit about your school and the issue with the bus and so on.
Oh, the schooling. Well, I went to Deep Run School all my school years. And
what grade did that go up to?
Seventh grade.
7th grade.
And then 2 of my children went over there, and they were bused there a little bit, but then they closed the school and sent them all to Manchester, and they still had better than a mile to walk to get to the bus.
Now, how many children did you and your wife have?
We had 11 altogether.
How many boys?
Well, it was 4 boys and 7 girls. Yeah, 4 boys and 7 girls. Then, of course, when they had run the buses and closed the school, then I got after the bus route and the school board.
Yeah, tell me about that. How did that start? You had they wouldn't come down here?
They wouldn't go this road here, and make the circle to go up the other road. So I had to go to the school board. And, of course, the superintendent out there wanted to give me a hard time, so I gave him a harder time.
Who was it?
Jennings.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, when I told him I'm going to get a petition signed by the neighbors that I saw before I came to see him, well, then he changed his tune and started talking like a man to me. And, of course, then they run the buses here. They said they'll run the buses as long as it's fit for the bus to go. And I said, well, if it ain't fit for the bus, it ain't fit for my kids to walk. So I just kept them home 3 days, and then the county started hauling stone in. Like I told him out there, I said, you're getting paid with our tax money, and so is the county. And it's no reason that we don't have a road. Because this was a county road before the one was back there. This was a county road ever since the house was built here. That back there just got on the county about 7 years before they run the buses on it.
Oh. Huh.
See, that's the way it was up at this end here. We were lost up here.
Now tell me a little bit about, now you got your, where did you get your diploma and graduate? Where was that?
At the Armory in Westminster.
The old armory?
The old Armory, yeah.
What was that like? How many kids were there with you?
Well, it was only 4 of us.
4?
4 of us that went out, yeah. Our teacher taking us out.
Who was your teacher?
Ruth Lawyer from down at Silver Run.
Uh-huh.
And she taking us out that time. There was 2 girls and 2 boys. There was John Frock and myself and Ruth Trish and let's see, what was the other's name? Louise. I can't think of the last name just now.
Okay.
And so the teacher taking us out there, and that's how we.
How did you get there? Did you drive? Did she drive you, or?
Yeah, she drove out. Well, my dad was taking me out, but she taking the girls from the school out. She taking the girls out, and John Frock.
What kind of a car did your dad have at the time?
27 Chevy. And the teacher, she had a 29 Chevy. Yep. So, well, you see, then well, at that time already they had Chrysler School down here at this school. And Wisner's School was up too because the 2 girls was from Wisner's. And they were from Wisner's School. Wisner's School closed and Chrysler's closed, and they were down here. And then after I was through school, then they closed Bishop's School over here and taken them over yet. So that's the way the school business went.
Yeah. Do you and how far did you have to walk to Deep Run School then, or?
Yeah, that's the only way we got there.
How far is that?
About 1.5 miles.
I imagine that was pretty tough in the winter time.
Well, that time you didn't mind getting out and going in the rough weather. Mm-hmm. Snow or ice, whatever, you had galoshes and you stomped through it.
Mm-hmm. Did you make it to school most days then?
Pretty well, yeah. Not unless we were sick and our parents kept us home. Mm-hmm. But I made pretty well my time in school.
Now, you worked in the, what, 1939? What did you do from 1939? You said to 43?
Well, I worked at the watershed down here, water company. Mm-hmm. We mowed between the pine trees that was planted. And I helped to plant pine trees from 1933 to 49.
And there were how many? About 80 of you? Is that right?
Well, there at one time when we had that large amount of trees to plant, that 125,000 trees, about 80 kids got together to plant. They brought them out from Hanover. And they planted, and then every boy around here wanted to get a little early money. Why, he went and planted trees. Of course, that was the first money you got for the spring of the year.
What did you use to cut the grass with?
Size.
Can you describe how you use them? Can you tell me?
Well, you had to go through your body motion is what done that.
Oh yeah.
It was the size, and you had a blade on the end of it, one of them crooked handles, and 2 handles, and I still got my whetstone laying back here yet from it.
Is that right? Now, how far is the watershed from your house?
Oh, it's a mile from here on the road across to it, but back behind here it comes within 1/4 mile. Up the bottom back here it comes within about 200 yards of my property line.
And what road is this right here?
Huh?
What road? What road is this right here?
Road, Panhole Hill Road.
And how? So pretty close to the Pennsylvania line then?
Within a mile.
Within a mile.
Yeah.
And how far are you from Manchester?
About 11 miles from Manchester and about 12 miles from Westminster.
And Hanover?
About 8. I'd call it to the square. They figured it was 8 miles to the square. And you take it at about, yeah, well, with horse and buggy was, we made about 8 miles, you know, going down Impounding Dam and then hit Beck Mill Road and going in.
Horse and buggy.
Horse and buggy. Taking us about 2 hours. Because they figure a horse travels walks about 4 miles an hour. And so we went in Beck Mill Road, and at the end of Beck Mill Road in there, when you got into Hanover, was a brickyard. Before I got to grandma's place.
Now, you did some other work too with a cannery. Where was that?
Well, I had worked at Pullman Standing Tomato Factory over here before I went to the watershed. That was in the 30s.
And where is that?
It was over here on Geating Road.
Is that in Carroll County?
Yeah, that's in Carroll County. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they had a tomato factory over there that we worked at.
And what did you do there?
I scalded tomatoes. Yeah, scalded tomatoes and carried them around to the tables where the women was sitting, dish pans.
Now, when you were growing up, how big is your farm here?
22 acres.
And what was it like during the Depression? Was it hard on you, or did you manage to get through it?
Well, we managed to get through it because we raised a lot of our stuff ourselves, and Mom charred a lot of stuff. At one time, she had around 1,000 quart jars of stuff sitting in the cellar for us to eat off of during the winter. And that's the way my wife did too. She used to have the same jar shells loaded down in the cellar.
I noticed you still have a wood cook stove. How long ago, when did you kind of stop using that? Or?
Well, I stopped using that. We had used it several times when my wife was around, but not too often. I'd say maybe 10 years ago we stopped using the wood stove.
So this is...
That time when I put the furnace in, the oil was 19 cents.
19 cents a gallon.
Yeah. And there ain't no reason that it is where it is today.
You had you talked about that machine you invented with your brother.
A bean hauler. Well, the old people, you know, they had a lot of soup beans they plant for the over the winter, and them got so dry and hard that they prick your fingers when you hold them. So we made this machine so we could hold them without pricking our fingers. I know David Sullivan over here, 80 Gammon, had the farm next to him. And, you know, beans will blossom again after they're picked the last time. So he had a field of beans over there. And they blossomed the last time and got beans on, and then they got dry and hard, you know. And he had 6 bags he brought over here to hold one time. soup beans that was. Well, it was regular beans, you know. But the ones he had was dark, because the string bean is a dark bean and the soup bean is a white bean. And when they're dry and hard, well, they're about the same.
Tell me about what you used I think it was in the tractor. You used gas a little bit, and then you used something else?
Well, you used coal oil to start the tractor. And then after you got the motor a little warm, then you switched over to coal oil.
Oh, you started with gas?
Started with gas, yeah. You cranked it, and then you switched over to coal oil.
And the reason, why did you use gas first? What?
Well, you see, that exploded, cold. But coal oil wouldn't. Coal oil, the manifold on the tractor was set for heat.
Okay.
And that heated the coal oil before it went through the muffler, through the spark plugs.
What kind of a tractor? Was it a tractor that you did that on, or?
Yeah, 1020 McCormick Deering.
What kind of wheels were on it? Were they just
All steel.
all steel wheels?
Yeah. Yeah, the front wheels on my brother's tractor, they sort of got bad, so he bought rims and got them welded on. Put tires on the front then.
Yeah.
But they came with steel that time.
Tell me a little bit about when you were a boy. You said you played a certain kind of game with the neighborhood kids.
What they called corner bowl. We used to go back here to the neighbors on the farm and play.
And can you describe how you play it?
Well, they made 4 corners. Four people stood on 4 corners of the barnyard, and then the other side that we were playing against was 2 in the middle. And you passed the ball around till it got to 3, then you got the chance to throw it somebody in the middle. And if you hit them, they were out, then somebody else had to come in. Yeah.
And you played that at sales too, to keep yourself?
Yeah, that used to be a big thing at public sales. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There they used to play a lot still at public sales.
Now, is it your second cousin who's an auctioneer now? Is it?
Well, it was my first cousin's son.
Your first cousin's son, and his name is?
Nevin Tastill.
Okay, and he still has an auction?
Oh yeah, he does it. Well, he does all the hay auctions out at the auction barn out at New Windsor, wherever they have it down in Medford there. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He does all the hay auctions every week. And then he has a lot of the auctions still at the farm museum. Mm-hmm. And then he has his consignment sale here, which is about 10 acres, all kind of stuff. Whatever you ain't got, you can go to that sale and buy it.
Let me ask you this. You said, I asked you if there were any problems in the neighborhood, and you said there were some interesting things that happened here.
Well,
across the road, there was, what was that? A still or?
Oh yeah, well, they used to have a moonshine still set up at different places around. Mm-hmm. So that was one of the things that they slipped in against the law.
Mm-hmm. And who do you know who ran that at that time? Who did that?
Whoever lived at the place.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I ain't mentioned no names on it. But
yeah.
But they had one back here in our bottom, down at the lower end, on the Kagi farm. Mm-hmm. And back here on Crowder Schoolhouse Road was one at that farm.
Did they ever get raided or anything like
well, they had somebody higher up to tip them off.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. The fellow down here, he had a fellow from Hanover that tipped him off, a detective. The same way it went with the other guy. Mm-hmm. They had some higher ups that liked the moonshine too that would tip them off. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep, that's the way life went.
Now your family right now are your brothers and sisters all living?
No, they're all gone.
All of them are gone.
All of them are gone. I'm the only one left in the family.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean your brothers and sisters, but your children.
My children's all living.
They're all living.
And we had them all at home here for my 92nd birthday. We had them all around the table.
Around the table. How many was that?
Well, it was, I think, well, some of the women wasn't along, but the ones that came from far, but there was 19 of us.
19. And how many grandchildren do you have?
You know, I can't exactly say. I know it's past the 24.
And great grandchildren, I suppose.
Oh yeah, I guess it's around 15 of them maybe.
Do you have great grandchildren?
Yeah, I guess everything that goes along. Yeah. Yeah. No, I didn't have no count lately on what the great grandchildren are and great, but I know some of the grandchildren has got children, so yeah.
And so your farm was basically a truck farm, like vegetables?
Yeah, strawberries, raspberries, and blackberries we picked and sold in Hanover.
And did you say you raised beef or pork or?
Yeah, we used to raise hogs still and sell.
And did you butcher them then?
Yeah, we butchered always 2 for ourselves. For our family, we butchered 2 of them. But we'd always raise 4, and then the 2 that we raised for Mom, she'd sell to the butcher.
And where was that?
Well, over here at Garvey, they done butcher, and they bought a lot of our hogs.
And where was that? Garvey's?
Garvey's right over here at the Maryland line, about a mile away from me.
Oh yeah. And where did you sell your vegetables?
Hanover. We'd peddle on the street. We'd go around the streets, and peddle.
So you'd have a wagon or?
Well, we'd peddle out of the car, And the last years, when my dad had it, we used to go in the daytime and peddle. Well, at the time, a lot of the women was home, they didn't work. Would take the last years here that my wife and I had it, we could do more from 4 o'clock to 9 than what we did in the whole day. In daytime and peddling.
Right here?
Yeah, but no, in Hanover, because after 4 o'clock the women came home from work, and then you had to go and you could go and they knew what they wanted.
Yeah.
And we could do more. It was nothing to go in here with about 8 crates of berries and get rid of them until 9 o'clock.
And how did you sell them?
By the quart.
And what were they priced at then?
Well, sometimes we had to sell 3 boxes for a quarter to get rid of them.
3 boxes for a quarter?
Yeah, that time things wasn't high. If you got 15 cents a box, you were getting good.
Let's talk a little bit about prices. What other prices do you remember from that time? What was your gas? What did your gas cost? You said.
Well, I bought gas from a farmer down where my brother lived for 10 cents a gallon. Then from there it was 12, 15, 20. It kept on going up like that. I knew right in there where Forest Park was a fellow he was a neighbor from down here. And he had a gas station there. I was getting it there for around 19 and 20 cents. That was about the average of it while I drove.
Did you have a dairy cow to have milk too? Or?
Well, we had our own cow here. We had our own milk. Yeah.
I suppose milk wasn't very expensive then either.
Well, if in wintertime when we run out, we'd go to the neighbor and get it for 6 cents a quart.
Oh, 6 cents a quart.
Yeah,
it's a lot more expensive now.
Oh my, yes. Now you can't even get a glass of it for that price.
No.
Yeah. But I tell you, it was time for the milk market to get up a little bit, because I tell you, the having cows and feeding your crop into them cows, you didn't make much profit, because $11 a hundred for milk, that's all the farmer got. $11 a hundred.
And this was, what year was this about, would you say?
Well, back in the 30s and 40s.
30s and 40s.
And even up in the 50s, why they didn't have no price on milk. The farmer could make much out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And but You take 100 pound of milk. Look how many gallons is in that.
How many gallons is in 100 pounds?
It's 8 pounds to the gallon.
So, it's about
8 12 is 96.
Yeah.
So they got 12 gallons of milk.
Yeah. And how much?
For $11.
Wow.
$11, $12, some a little more. But when I was younger, well, they had the creamery down here at the store. Then the farmers would hold their milk down there and they'd separate it. Take the cream. Then the farmer could bring his milk back and feed it to his hogs. And then later on, then when Walter Ben's taken the store over down there, then he hauled the milk all the way into Hanover to a creamery in Hanover, big creamery. You know, on Poplar Street that was, and then they shipped it out by railroad then.
What are the most interesting places you've gone to in Carroll County? Have you, that you remember as a kid, with your dad?
Well, we didn't do too much traveling. If we got to Westminster, well, that was pretty near the forest we got. You take it as far as going to Carroll County, I got more in Pennsylvania than what I got in Carroll County, because right here at the line, and most of the relatives was in Pennsylvania.
Now your father, he worked. He traveled, hauled things for a cannery, or
well, from 1909 to 1912, he was a teamster for Shriver's.
Oh, okay. Tell me about that a little bit.
Well, he hauled cans from out at the canning factory, out on there were 140 crosses, 27. There's where the factory was.
Oh.
And he lived here at the airport. And the farm was right on Meadow Branch Road, right there on the corner. It's where the farm was. Everything is tore down now. But there's where he had to get up and get his horses ready and get to Westville.
And it was right where the airport is today.
Yeah. Well, he helped the farm, the airport. He didn't do too much on the farm, but the airport was farmed by Shriver's at that time. They had peas on it. One year the peas was up 2 inches high and it snowed on them.
Oh.
But he had to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, get his horses ready. Mom would make breakfast. He'd go back to the house and get breakfast. And then he'd hook up and leave for Westminster. In bean picking time, when they had the migrant workers to pick beans, he had to take the 20-foot hay carriage. Take it down there. He had to be down there in time to have them to the field till 7 o'clock. So you know he got up early in the morning.
So he took them.
Yeah, that's the only way they could transport them is on a hay carriage wagon.
And where were they living? Where were they staying?
Well, they were down there at 27 there in that woods. They had shanties in there for them to live in.
Oh, yeah.
There were the Y's, you know, for to go to Manchester, and they're in that, that's a little piece of woods in there yet.
Yeah.
Well, that was below the canning factory. That's where you had to pick them up at it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So he had left here from your farm with the
Well,
wagon.
out there at the airport, there at Meadow Branch Road, he had to go to Westminster and go down there and pick them up and get them to the field.
Now, but he left from here initially.
They lived out there.
Oh, okay.
The little log house was the last one that's standing out there along the airport.
Oh, and that's where you live? That's where
That's where my mother and father lived when they was out there.
Yeah.
Right across from what used to be called Gilbert's Inn.
Uh-huh.
Well, right across there was a little log house along the pike.
So about how far, let's see, would that be right across from the airport, or?
Well, it was along the airport there. Along the airport there, along the pike, yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, oh, I don't know, it was maybe a couple hundred yards, you know, from where the big farmhouse was that time, but it was a big farmhouse sitting there on the corner of Meadow Branch Road that time.
In 97 there.
And back in the time that Pop worked out there, and then Eames Smelser, they lived up on the house that's still standing on the corner of Meadow Branch Road there. Yeah, right there's where he had to get his horses from.
Now he delivered to different towns or something too?
Well, he'd haul up here wheat or anything that he had to haul. He was just like a trucker. He'd haul up here to Union Mills to the homestead. He'd bring a load of wheat up sometimes. And then they had the cannon factory there below the road there at the bridge. He'd bring cans up there still to that canning factory the drivers had. And then he even hauled as far as Littlestown. They had a one up at Littlestown that he'd haul to. And so he was just a delivery, just like a trucker. He even went as far as from Westminster to New Windsor at times.
Now, you told me about the homestead there, that it had, what did it have during the 20s?
During the 20s.
Yeah, it had a wheel, or what was that?
A turbine.
Turbine. No
turbine during the 20s. It was no water wheel there.
Oh, okay. And what is a turbine?
It's a just the water goes through and it forms a horsepower. Now a turbine is around 17 to 19 horsepower.
Oh, okay.
They deliver. A lot of mills had them in.
Does it run off of power then, or
the water?
Water power.
The water by going down in them, why?
Oh, okay.
It gives the power. I never saw any too close, but that's what they told me about, you know. And as far as the flour mills, them was up on the third floor, roller mills. And then the flour came from the roller mill down in the siever that sieved the Brant and Middling, and the flour part, and the flour had to pass a 200 mesh silk screen to get down to the flour bin, down in the next floor.
And that made it very fine then?
Yeah, the roller mills up above. There was 2 roller mills up on the top floor, because I remember just as good as the day I was there, and that was back in 28.
28.
Yeah.
Now you said there was a cannery up along above Shriver's there, the homestead, or
right down below the bridge there.
Yeah.
If you look down there, you can still see the cement piers where the factory was sitting on in the meadow. Right below the bridge there, where they put the new bridge in.
Is that above north of Shriver's or down?
No, it's if you go from the homestead out that road. Why, it's right below that house there in the meadow, before you get to the bridge. Okay. It's on the other side of the bridge, still.
Okay, the homestead is on 97, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and so it's here. Is it this way up toward Pennsylvania or
it's toward Pennsylvania, but it's right. If you go on the bridge, you can look down and see the cement piers right below the bridge. After they put the new bridge in, and after that they tore the cannon factory down.
And they grew peas across the way there.
Well, the farmers hold peas in there. I don't know where they hold them at for that factory, but sometimes a lot of that was done by hand at that time. Same way as beans. You take it when we used to peddle in daytime, and beans, Weibrenner's cannon factory in there, if you wanted to make a couple of cents, you went out to the factory. It was an express wagon, and brought a bag or 2 of beans into your place, sit on the back porch and string them with a paring knife. That's how the Weinbrenners done a lot of their bean stringing.
And where were the Weinbrenners?
They were in on Poplar Street.
Is that in Hanover then?
Yeah. Well, they down here along the Grand Valley Road, the Hanover Road going toward Hanover. They had it they had, I guess, 5 or 6 farms.
Now this canning company, what was the name of it again?
This was Weibrenner's. Is everything tore down now?
Next to Shriver's. What was that? Do you remember the name? That means the.
Shriver's.
Next to them, right?
Oh, down here. or
Where the bridge is? 'Cause that's next to Shriver's.
that was Shriver's canning factory there in Union Mills.
Right. Okay.
Then they had they had a canning factory down on the Manchester Road too, where Pop, hauled from. You see, there they'd get things in from the railroad.
Oh.
The cans came by railroad.
Oh.
And then they had to, I don't know if they was in racks or what, but then from there is where he had to haul them.
Now, they didn't do all that by hand when they came in, did they? I mean, did you say they had a machine, some kind of a machine what was that? What did you say it was? A whip? There was a machine that took care of the peas?
Oh, the pea winder. Pea winder.
Pea winder.
Yeah.
And what was that like? What did it do?
Well, it was a thick, long machine, and then it had like paddles in to hammer the peas out.
Uh-huh.
And the whole stalk went through this machine.
Oh.
And it hammered the peas out, and then they'd roll down the canvas in bins, and then they'd box them up and haul them to the factories.
Uh-huh.
That's how that worked. It was a machine, they run it with a tractor. Mm-hmm. And that hammered the pea pods open, and then they'd roll down, and then they'd take them to the factory that way. And then every farmer, when his load was off, then they had the boxes there, they'd weigh them on a scales. How many pound of peas was in his load. And then they'd send it, then the truck would come and take them to the factory then.
How did you had 11 children. How did you, I have 2 children. I'm just wondering, how did you manage it? Did they help a lot on the farm? And
Well, when they come home from school, each one had its chore.
Uh-huh.
That time you burnt the cook stove, you filled the wood box, you go up and throw hay or straw down, whatever was needed in the barn, to feed the cattle the next day, and that's how you kept them occupied. They didn't go out here and skateboard on the road right after they got home from school. They had something to do. That's how we kept them going, and they all grew up, and I don't think any of them is crippled from it either. Not child labor should do something like that. Yeah, that's the way. Then of course, then when I got the later years here, when I had a tractor, they'd come home. Mom, she wanted a tractor with a self-starter on. I was working in the shops, and kids would come home, she'd back up to the hare, and they'd hook her up, and she'd hare the field till I got home, then I could plant it. That's how we worked together. The kids, they were big enough, to hook up the tractor when she backed up to the equipment, and that's how we done that. Yeah, we worked together. The whole family worked together, you might as well say it that way. Then it would be the bigger girls, they'd stay in the house, and sometimes we ate supper before we went out, and sometimes we ate it when we come back at 9 o'clock.
So you stay out that late? Then,
Oh, yeah. I was plowing corn at 10 o'clock some nights. I had lights on the tractor. And coming out of factory and getting on a tractor was just like changing jobs. It relaxed you. And so that's the later. Well, when they had the horses, then I had to lose work to do the farming.
Now you in your retirement, you also used your skills for making. You have a wood shop, right?
Yeah.
And you made what kinds of things have you made?
Well, anything that the old people wanted: tables, chairs. Anything at all. If they wanted a cabinet, here's one we just made a couple of months ago.
Is that right? And you made toys or like? You made
well,
toys?
Then when we built this piece to the house, we had it empty for a while. Then my wife and I made all them kitchen cabinets.
Oh my!
They made them over here in the wash house. That time I didn't have the shop set up like I had now. Yeah. So
Now, where did you, let's see, how old is your youngest, about your,
Debbie, let's see, once she didn't make the 40 yet.
so what high school did she go to, or,
North Carroll.
North Carroll High
That's
School?
where a lot of them finished.
A lot of
Well,
you-
they went to Manchester and Greenmount before they built North Carroll.
Okay,
But after they had everything closed up, well, they went to Manchester or Greenmount, and then when they opened Hampstead, then they went to that school.
to North Carroll High School.
Uh,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, but none of them went through college, and they all got good jobs.
Pretty proud of them.
I'm proud of them all. Yeah.
The, so you have you still work in your wood shop at all?
No, I gave it up because,
Uh-huh.
I didn't want to be out there and nobody around. I didn't mind working out there when there's somebody around, but now since I got older, I just gave it up. Let the boys still work if they want to work in there. they still use it yet.
Uh-huh.
Now, my Carl, he wants to make a pie safe. I don't know if you ever know what a pie safe was, but
Describe it a little bit.
well, it's a covered with tin instead of panels. Has tin in with holes punched in.
Uh-huh.
Now, Mom had one in there in the cellar steps, and we sold it at the sale. And what is his name now? The auctioneer down here on Mayberry Road got it. And he come here one day and he said, "Where's your records to the sale of who bought the stuff?" I said, "Well," I said, "there's in this tin box," I said, "back here." So he looked it up, and here he found the name, and he called him up. So he went down with a camera and taking pictures of it. The book lays out there where he's working out of. And the tin, he's starting to punch the tin out himself. Knows how they had it floored, and all. And he's starting to get wood together. Like he said last evening, he called me. He said it was all my work. He said, "I ain't got much time," he said, "to get back to working on my pie safe."
What were some of the other families around here? What were some of the names of the families that lived around here?
Well, the Garbicks lived out here, and over where the butcher shop was Garbicks. It was a Garbick family in this neighborhood. Well, the Levi Garbick and Manda, they owned the big farm back here. Well, they had a family, and their family used to alternate, and live on the farm back there. And then Bert, one of their boys, he owned the farm right out over the hill here. And and then Stewart's, they owned the farm down here, and then Winter's dad owned the farm next, and Malcolm, that was his brother, owned over here along Grand Valley Road. And there was people by the name of Tony lived down here on this place where they tore down. I remember them. And then up here was West Dietz, the older people, but they weren't up here too long after I was born. And then Barnhart lived up here, Floyd Barnhart, and he was married to one of the Garvey girls. So it was pretty near a family of people living at both sides of it. Yeah, the Stewarts, they moved from down off of Sawmill Road down in there. They moved up here. They bought this one. Rob Leppo is the one that built the barn down here. I know my dad, him and his brother, carried the stones and the mud to build that barn down there at 50 cents a day.
50 cents a day?
Yeah.
And how long ago was that? What did you figure? About what years was that?
Well, that was, I'd say it would be back in about 1978, something like that. It was before they moved to Westminster.
Oh, yeah.
They built that barn. That barn wall down there was the mason, labor, and all was $38.
Oh my.
Now you couldn't get a block laid for that.
No. Right.
Yep, that's what their wages was that time.
Oh, darn. Do you, now, the families, did anyone raise all beef cattle or anything around here, or is it all?
Well, the steward down here, he raised beef cattle, and he also had about 12 dairy cattle in the barn down here. He raised steer. He'd have about 16 to 20 at a time that he would feed up.
Oh yeah.
And
anyone raised dairy?
he had dairy cows,
dairy
about
cows.
12 of them that they'd milk.
Mm-hmm.
And then his dad down below there used to have beef cattle down there. And then Malcolm over, he had some cows too and beef cattle. But that's what mostly they farmed for. Then Bixlers lived down here on the other farm, and they had cattle. They didn't have beef cattle. They had mostly dairy. They done more milking.
Now, your wife's first name is Pearl.
Pearl.
And where did you meet Pearl?
Forest Park. And the picnics around. Used to have picnics down at Dups's church for every Saturday night, and that's how we got acquainted.
And what church is around here now? Too, you mentioned.
Well, St. Bartholomew's is right down here across the line, about a mile.
Is that the one they rebuilt, or?
Yeah. Well, yeah. They had to, back in '35. They had built the new church, and then they added to it since. And on this side of the church is where used to be a mill, a Geating's mill. That's what burned the church down that time.
Oh, okay.
Then they had to rebuild. But they never built up the old mill no more. Like I told one of the boys we come up through, I said, that field down here, I said, that used to be the dam to the mill. It was shut down today. He got cattle in it, pasturing it.
Well, we're just about at end of the tape here, and I just want to thank you for doing this for Carroll County Remembers, Mr. Bachman, and this is John Widiak and Mr. Edward Bachman signing off on May 2nd, 2008, with Mr. Bachman at 92 years old, who's lived in this house for all his life. Thank you.
All right.